on Instagram. Hold on, I'm not smiling on that one. Ah, that'll do. Thank you guys. Alright, so, how's everyone doing? Everyone having a good conference? Yeah? Yeah? No? Everyone's tired, I know. It's been a long day. So I'll try and keep it light. Show of hands, how many of you are using Angular? Well, that's good, because you were here for Angular, right? That's a good thing. Alright, it looks like Angular is pretty popular in Poland. That's good to know. That's another country that we're live in. Right, so my talk is called It's Alive, right? Actually, I should get this here. Second. I forgot my clicker, and my clicker is my phone, so there we go. So, It's Alive, tips and tricks for using Angular in production. Well, I kind of had a change of mind, and now it's going to be tips and tricks for using Angular in general, because you'll see. So, my name is Thomas Horvath. I am from... This clicker sucks. See? She told you it would be funny. So, my name is Thomas Horvath. I'm from Ireland. It's that little spot on the map in a country where it always rains. And I'm a front-end developer and somewhat of a speaker as well. And I fell in love with Angular about 3 years ago, and I haven't stopped using it since. I think it's a fantastic framework, and hopefully I'll be able to share some of my experiences that I had with it over the couple of years in small applications and large. So this is more of a story rather than a serious talk. So developing an application is one thing, but going live is another. We expect it to be quite smooth. Okay, I'm just going to use this. We expect things to go smoothly when we go live. But the reality is quite different, isn't it? The reality kicks in, and suddenly things break. And they break quite fast. And you wonder why. Well, the reality is, going live is a new journey every single time. It's never the same. We either rush by deadlines, or we lack a deployment strategy, or we run into unexpected bugs. I mean, if you haven't run into bugs while going live, I mean, oof, it must be really good. So first thing, like a little trick is to have a really good deployment strategy. And have it from the beginning. It's a key, and it will significantly cut your time to live. One great thing is if you have a backend developer in .NET like me, use Microsoft Azure. All you have to do is have your project on Git, have 2 separate branches, your master and your live, connect your live to your Azure account, and then when you're happy with your application, build it, push your distribution folder to your live branch, and then git push. It will automatically push it to Azure, and your application will be live in seconds. It's magic. It really is. Now, if you have a small application, I recommend using FIREBASE deploy. Well, actually, it could be a massive application as well, but I personally use it for small application. My day-to-day demos and even my presentations, I just use FIREBASE. All you have to do is install it, log in, put your credentials in, FIREBASE in it, and follow the on-screen instructions on the command line. Then, when you're happy, again, just deploy, and it'll be live in seconds. So it's key to have a good strategy. Now, that was just a light tip. Now, let's talk about spring cleaning. Now, imagine your office, or your house, or your room. And a year later, you decide to do some spring cleaning. I bet you will find stuff that you didn't even know you had a year ago. Same thing applies to your code. It's important to do some spring cleaning. We often forget to remove unused functions and variables while developing. We all console log things and forget about them. And we end up with something like that, eventually. So split up your code. If your components are getting too big, split them up. Put your logic into a service. Remove duplicates. We all have them. We hate to admit it, but we do. And merge things into common services as well. And of course, remove unused code if you see some. Now, debugging a larger application can be quite tricky. So use all the help you can get. And there's some fantastic tools out there right now. There's Webpack Bundle Analyzer. Let's see if this works. Clearly not. Oh, there you go, it does. NGRX DevTools and Angular Augury. Now, all of these 3 tools are freaking amazing. So let me just talk about them real quick. Webpack bundle, oh, okay, screw this phone. Webpack bundle analyzer. If you have used it before, then you know what I'm talking about. When you're developing an application, let's say you use Angular material and then you don't like it, and you use PrimeNG or something, and you don't like that, you use another UI library of some sort. You go and later on you kind of forgot about it. You may forget about it. So running a bundle analyzer will tell you what you're importing and how big things are. So if you have 3 different UI libraries, it will tell you, and you'll be able to remove them and go live with just 1, not 3. It's a simple thing, but we often forget. Another good tool is Angular Augury. When your application gets a bit larger, you'll be able to visualize all the building blocks of Angular. Your injection graphs, your component and router trees. It's a fantastic tool when your application gets quite big. And if you haven't used it, do try, give it a shot. The guys that have done, Wrangler.io had done an amazing job on it, and I highly recommend it. The last one is only if you're using NGRX. Now, if your application is is getting larger and larger, I highly recommend using NGRX Store as your state management. Now, when your state gets quite big and it can get quite complex, going back and forth within your state is a lifesaver when you're developing and debugging your application. So NGRX Store DevTools is a fantastic plugin to get. It's you have to install it as a Chrome extension and then install it on your Angular app. It's just a module. So now let's get into some serious stuff. Router has gone through quite a lot of changes recently, right? And if your routing is on point, or you're just getting by, it's definitely good to just cross-check before you're going live. I've just done a quick roundtable discussion with some people over there a few minutes ago, and most of the questions were kind of about router issues. I'm surprised to hear that, but I'll just give you a few tips how to use router when you're going live. So first of all, cover your routes. LAZYLOAD and preload them where possible. And of course, guard your routes. It's super important to just not let anyone pass. So let's talk about covering your routes. Let's say someone types in something into URL which isn't a route that you actually have. Well, have a wildcard. And definitely put your wildcard the last, because Angular works as a first match wins strategy. So if you put your wildcard as a second route, your hero's route will never find the light of day. It will just disappear. So definitely last. LAZYLOAD your routes where possible. When you load an application, you don't want a user to wait forever to load your application. Let's say we have 10 different modules, 10 different routes, and the user just loads a home page. And there's not much on it. It loads all that code into the home page if you don't LAZYLOAD things. Now, the user might never get to your route number 8 or number 7. Why do you load all that code in? It makes no sense. So LAZYLOAD them where possible. Now, it does involve taking your component and turning it into a module. Take some time, but it's a good thing to get used to. Definitely do it. One more, and guard your routes as well. So if you have a route that's only supposed to be accessed by users, well, let not anyone go there if they're not a user. So use the auth guard. You can import, you can create your own authentication guard service, and you can use can activate in your route, which will just return a true or a false boolean. And if it returns true, well then load the route. If false, you can set up a redirect. I won't get into it too much because I've got a few more tips to go through. I just got to mention who did that. That's cool. It's nice. So change detection. This one's a big one, right? This is quite important. When we're developing applications, we develop a component and we run it, we test it, it works, it's fine, great, fantastic. And we forget about it and move on. Nothing to do, not a big deal. So change detection is a great feature, but it might become your worst nightmare if you don't do it properly. Sloppy change detection will turn your application into a snail. As each component has its own change detection, things can get quite complicated. Imagine that we have a list component here, and we make a change. Change detection will go from top of the tree down to bottom of it. And imagine if we had not 3 item components, but 1,000 of them. And Angular will run change detection 1,000 times. Suddenly your application is a snail. Or a slot. Either one. So do it right, and use change detection strategy on push. And with change detection on strategy, use immutable objects where possible, or observables. It will save your application from becoming an unusable mess. And I will explain this later on with a quick demo. What's my time? Quickly, I am doing fine. Perfect. So, service workers is another great tip to have when you're going live. It's super easy to set up. Now, service workers can be quite complex when you have to make your own one from scratch. But there's a fantastic package. Now it's actually add Angular / service worker, I think. But there's another one called just SW precache. It's the same thing. So you can do it manually, or you can use Angular's version as well. What it will do, so it's pretty much easy to set up, but what it will do is it will speed up your application and enable offline features. So you'll be able to load the application offline if you're not relying on any HTTP services. And suddenly, it feels like your application is super fast. It's not supported by all browsers yet, so do keep that in mind. By using a service worker, you're not going to speed up everyone's experience, but most of them you will. And also, it requires HTTPS, so just keep that in mind when you're developing. It will work on localhost, not an issue. However, if you're going to go live, make sure to use HTTPS. I mean, it's 2017, come on. So, without a service worker, we can see that our campaigns are being loaded in, and there's a kilobyte here, there, and everywhere. With service worker, it's cached. So on our second load, our application size was cut in half. And I think it's an amazing feature to have, especially when you have mobile applications. So next thing, set up your server. This is not very related to Angular, well, kind of is. But when you go live, it's important to have your server set up correctly. So I use Express because I'm a JavaScript developer, so bite me. You can pretty much do a lot of things to optimize server-wise. You can use compression on your server. You can set up course policy. And you can set up historyAPIFallback for Angular. So let's talk about them really quickly. Setting up a historyAPIFallback. Now, when you develop your application, you might see something like this when you go live. Now that sucks. Who wants this? Hands up. Yeah, I thought so. Who wants this? Hands up. Yeah, I thought so too. Okay. So, it's so easy to actually set this up. In Node Express, all you have to do is install the Express historyAPIFallback package and just abuse on your index and define what your distribution folder is. And it suddenly just works. It's super simple, but we forget to do these things. Another one is GZIP Compression. You can use Brotli, but it's not supported with all browsers again, but hopefully it will be soon because it's really cool. But same thing applies. Download the Node package, and again, app.use compression. You're halving your application size will be gone in half again. Another important one is using course policy. So let's say you're running your application on example.com or foo.com, and you're running your API from example.com. Well, if you leave it open, you are exposing yourself to unwanted security breaches, and you do not want that. So it's a good practice to define where your APIs, your resources are coming from, and only from there. Otherwise, you might run into serious trouble, especially cross-site scripting. It's a mess. So that was just some server-side stuff you can do if you're a full-stack developer. And if you have a backend developer, just tell them to do these things as well. It'll save a lot of trouble in the future. This one is not really, doesn't apply for production. And doesn't really apply right now, but it will very soon. Build your application correctly. If you're not using Angular CLI, do. I mean, it wasn't good back then, but now it's fantastic. I wouldn't recommend anything else. Back then, I was using my own Webpack configs and my own Go files and doing all these different things manually. Now, you can stop doing that. Angular CLI does everything. I'm sure there was a talk today about Angular CLI, or is it tomorrow? I'm not sure. But I'm sure it was covered heavily why it's so good to use Angular CLI. So when you're building an application, ng-build, --AOT, I think they don't actually have to do that anymore, --production, mark your environment for production, and there's a new feature too, --build-optimizer. Hands up who've heard of this one? Yeah, it doesn't. So this is the cool moment, right? This is the one cool thing you might get away with when you get home and you're going to try that. So recently, Angular CLI 1.3 or 1.4 was released. I'm not sure which one. And this new feature was added. So what it does, it optimizes your build furthermore, only when you use AOT compilation. And depending on your content of your files, it will fold classes. So it will take your static properties and fold them into ES5 classes. It will scrub files, so Angular decorators and constant and parameters will be removed. And will purify. So it will add this little comment to your files, and will tell Augury.js, which is a Webpack plugin, and it will mark those files for further reduction, and those files can be then dropped. Because Augury can't drop all your files. It doesn't know if it needs them or not. This was a big issue with tree shaking. That's why it wasn't working that well back then. However, by adding this pure functionality, tree shaking is no longer shaky. It actually works. So there's a lot more to it, and it's currently very experimental. But I will show you how it works today. In one word, if I were to describe it, it's just magic. So one more thing I will say is debug, debug, and debug. Use Augury, use NGRX DevTools, and use Google Chrome developer tools. I think it's the best one out there. And in a second you will see why. If there might be some bottlenecks, or memory leaks, or different bugs, you'll be able to fix them with Chrome DevTools. It's a never-ending story with bugs. And to kind of explain how it feels to run an Angular application in production while trying to fix bugs is something like this. It really never ends. It's every day. Keep on drilling. So, I have some time, and I will do a quick demo. Oh yeah, exit. View, exit, full screen. So, with a few tips and tricks, I have built, it's good to hear these tips and tricks, right? Some of them are very common sense, some of them are quite new. Some of them you just maybe have forgotten to do, and when you go home and you'll be like, okay, let's apply that quick fix. It'll make our life easier. However, seeing is believing. So how about we try something? I quickly, this morning, some of the speakers will know I was scrambling to make this work. Build a quick application. Quick question, can everyone see clearly? Yeah? Okay, cool. So, all we have here is a login. When we log in, we'll be able to see two more buttons. This one is a logout button, and this one is a search button. So when we click into this, we'll be able to load in all our speakers. Pretty neat. We can also search for our speakers. She's great. If you have any questions about Microsoft Azure deployment, definitely ask Simona. If you think I'm a fool, that's me.
No way.
So it's a quick application. There's nothing wrong with it. It works, right? I mean, it's quite big. It's 5.7 megabytes. That's not a big issue. I mean, all we have to do is build it and compile it, and it'll be smaller. So there's another feature here. We can click a help button, and it will pop up a quick info bar, and it says you can search all speakers at FRONTEND-CON. And when we click it, it'll hide. It's pretty fast, right? Now remember when I was talking about change detection? How that we forget, when we build a component, we forget to test against performance? So 30 components, each of these is a component, by the way. Each of these items is a component. And each of these components has its own change detection. Now imagine we didn't have 30 speakers, but we had 1,000 speakers. Now I know it was a bit of an overkill, but think of it as your application scales. I mean, never build this application, this is silly. But in your own applications, things will scale. And you will forget to test things. So let's change that. And actually, first, before I do that, before I do the change detection, let's log out. And as you can see, if I log in and go in here, there's a search route, right? So if I log out and go to search, I get nothing. Well, that's not good. You should be, so the one thing we could be doing here is using can activate or can load with an authentication guard to check if the user is logged in or not. And let's try that first. So let's do that. And first of all, so this is the application. I mean, you can get it from my GitHub, but I'm sure you don't want to, so all good. So I've already built an authentication guard, and you can already see that I have that imported here. So I'm just going to quickly can activate. And all this will do is will return a boolean, true or false, if the user is logged in or not. And I'm using local storage as a login, so no big deal. Alt guard. There we go. Let's save and compile. And let's check this again. So now, if I go to search, I'm not logged in, so if I go to search, I'm brought back home. Because now I have an authentication, the user is not logged in, and our can activate will turn false. Our logic will turn back to home. It's quite important to do these things when you go live, because you might end up, user might end up going to a link and things might break. No one wants that. So that's one thing out of the way. So let's log in and go to our search. So now let's add 1,000 speakers. That'd be a good one, right? So as I said, yes. So let's add 1,000 speakers. So I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to use this generate users function instead. And all this does is it creates a for loop of 1,000, pushes all these users by an ID, name, title, and image, and pushes that into an array. Fantastic, no big deal. Let's see what happens. Nothing, right? I mean, 1,000 users, right? Pretty cool, it's fast, no big deal. Application size actually didn't change much. Maybe it actually got smaller, I'm not sure. So what's different? Remember this help button I had here? Let's click that. I clicked it, by the way. Click. Click. Did that take longer than usual? Let's try that again. Let's increase this to 3,000 to just make a point. Because I like making points. It's fun. Alright. Again, application loaded. Now let's click. Oh yeah, there's something wrong there, right? Now, if you built that there with your only 30 components, you wouldn't even notice. But when you scale things, you'll start noticing different things. So let's fix that. Let's figure out what's wrong. So I'm going to use developer tools here on Chrome to figure out what's wrong. So I'm going to just quickly refresh this page. I'm in Performance tab, by the way. I'm going to click Record on my Performance tab. And I'm going to click Help. Wait a few seconds. And I'm going to stop recording. And boom, we can see that that took 2 seconds or something like that, right? It shouldn't take 2 seconds to click a button. All the button is doing is changing a boolean from true or false. It's not touching any of those 3,000 speakers. So it shouldn't be happening, right? This is because of our change detection. So when we go into our activity, we can see that top function there is our item component.ts, and inside our item component we have a function called foobar. So let's check our code. And if I go to my item component, and on do check, we run a function foobar, and foobar just console logs checked list. Now, this doesn't make much sense. I mean, why would you console log this, right? But you could have genuine logic for when you want to make a change detection. Let's say something changed and you actually want to have something happen on every change that happens on that component. But however, we never actually changed the user value. We actually changed a quick boolean called help by using show help function with the help button. We never touched users. So how do we fix this? Well, we use change detection strategy on push. So in our list component, We changed our chassis from default. By the way, you could have this or you could have that. It doesn't matter. It's the same. But we'll change it to OnPush and see what happens. How am I with time? Amelia? Am I okay? Who knows? It doesn't matter. I think she's going to kill me because I forgot to record. Yeah. This is in a different zone. It's okay. So let's see what happens. We changed our chassis, right? Things should work, right? It shouldn't happen anymore. And there it is. One change and we're good to go. Now, actually, it was 2 changes, but I think it was just a 1 change. Now, another thing you could do to prevent that happening is to use an immutable object. So when we generate our users, instead of using a users array, let's use an immutable object instead, like list, and pass users there then. Users there. This way, we know that users will never change, unless we want them to. Or we could use observables and push changes through that. Okay, I'm just going to go back and save, because I see a red line, and I don't like that. All right, there we go. Come on. All right, well, that's happening. So now, as you can see, that, of course, because there we go. Clear this out. Undefined, okay. That's an odd one, because I haven't made a single change, hey? Save, and you know what the good thing is? Just recompile. Just recompile. You see, I was praying to demo gods earlier on today, and it obviously didn't work out. I mean, this happens every time, doesn't it? You should never live code it. Whatever it is, never live code, guys. It's just not worth it. Actually, I'm doing this on purpose. I'm just trying to kill time. There we go. See, I haven't made a change. Simple recompiling worked. I mean, Angular is a mysterious beast. So now when we click it, it's instant. So a simple change in your application can make a huge difference. So now let's have a look at how big our application is. At the moment, it's 4.9 megabytes. It's pretty big. So let's change that. So what can we do? Well, we can ng build --aot --prod --build -optimizer. This will take some time, so I will explain what else I have. I have a server, and on my server I'm using GZIP Compression to lower my size of application. I'm also using historyAPIFallback API. So I'm not getting ugly URLs, and I'm getting some pretty ones. And also, I have a service worker. I have an SW precache config, and I'm saying, take these folders and these assets and precache them on the second load. So while that's happening, 92%, there we go. Oh, wow, not bad. So let's have a look at the application size. Not bad at all. It's pretty decent. So let's have a look. I'm going to disable the compression for now. And I'm not going to use service worker either. I'm just going to run the server. Now, let's have a look at our application again. 1,000 kilobytes. We went from 4.9 megabytes to 1,000 kilobytes. It's pretty impressive. With just simple command of ng build --aot --prod --build -optimizer. It's a mouthful. So what else can we do? Well, we can add compression. And I'm going to just rerun the server. Let's have a look again. Half. It's freaking amazing what we can do. I mean, this is 10% of the size of our application already. So what else can we do to improve our performance? Well, let's add service work. So I have a command in my package, my script file, and I have a SW, which is an SW precache module, and it's taking my precache config, which I just showed you a second ago, and it's taking those resources and precaching them on the second load. So let's try it. npm run SW, and now all it said, I'm nearly done. 2 seconds. So all it, yeah, I am running out of time. Sorry about that, guys. We can see that we pre-cached about 900 kilobytes in 7 resources. Now we'll see if that's really that true, but let's try it. So node server.js again. I misspelled that. There we go. So let's try that again. I'm going to hide the console because it's not necessary. And my application is now 88.7 kilobytes. 4.9 megabytes to 88 kilobytes. Using just a few tips and tricks can take your application from being a slow mess to a lightning speed demon. I mean, that's a shitty analogy, but hey, you get the point. Hopefully you've learned something new. If you didn't, that's okay too. I hope you at least had fun. So thank you very much. I appreciate FRONTEND-CON for having me, and stay cool. Oh, one more thing.